Let us take from two reports, one by the US, another by the UK. Both reports seem to have classified Nigeria to have reached a point of no return on its journey to failure. Dr. Ahmed, I want you to take it in. Point of no return on its journey to failure. Does Northern Elders Forum, is it not frightened by this scenario? And what can we as a nation and people do to make this a prediction that will not come to pass?
Have we reached a point, a stage in a point of no return?
As a matter of fact, the US Air Force has already put up a scenario and has begun to define US interest in a failed Nigeria.
I would say I've read bits and pieces of that report. I will be modest enough to say I'm an academic. Sometimes when we read things, we read them and we critically analyze them. Nigeria hasn't reached a point of no return. We're failing in critical areas. And if we don't make a U-turn, and 2023 is the turning point. Is the turning point. The elections of 2023 is the turning. If we miss that turning point, and we will miss it if we don't elect good leaders, genuinely good leaders, committed leaders, people who understand our problem, who are willing to work hard to make it a turning point. Not just the president, governors, legislators. And we generate national support behind that leadership. And we have a very clear agenda about what to do with insecurity, what to do with crashed economy, what to do with cost of living, what to do about the distance between the citizen and the state, what to do about various components, parts of the country saying we don't, some of them even saying we don't want to be part of this Nigeria again. We have a lot of problems. If we don't fix them, we will go downwards. Now, I don't know what a point of no return is. In academic terms, it's very difficult to pin it down. It depends on what you're looking at. But we are in trouble. And the Northern Elders Forum is intensely concerned. This is why when we began this program, I mentioned to you that we appealed to our colleagues, elders, leaders of social-cultural groups, to please lower down these rhetorics. The real politicians are already there, politicking. What you are doing is sending signals to other people that there is a division between real politics and the kind of politics that causes trouble. Stop it. Encourage people. If you want a president to come from your part of the country, campaign for it, negotiate, canvass it. It is possible.
It is possible. Now, let me draw your attention to what I'm sure is going to ruffle your thoughts a little bit. And that is that one of the causes of insurgency, banditry, insecurity in Nigeria is poverty. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Now, if you agree, the Fulani in Nigeria is said to have created one of Africa's largest population of poor people. Mm-hmm. Through, in northern Nigeria, through the emirate system, by which there is a landless Hausa ruled by a land-controlling Fulani. And unless that poverty is addressed, not just northern Nigeria, not just Nigeria, but West Africa could unravel. Because if over 40 million poor, impoverished, hopeless, no future Hausas are unleashed on West Africa, the region will collapse. And that Nigeria cannot stand the avalanche in the anger of that locust. Does this sound ridiculous? And is it necessary to rethink that system in a way that confers dignity and honor without creating the mass poverty?
Would
You are Fulani. That's
Yes.
ask you this question.
With due respect, I disagree with your prognosis. You were right when you began by saying the Fulani has created a huge, has added to the huge reservoir of northern poor. But that's only area where you're right. From that point on, what you said subsequently is not correct. And how does the Fulani, how did some of the Fulani cause or widen? Yes. Banditry, kidnapping, wrestling, and violence has pushed a lot of Hausa people who were Hausa peasants, people who are living in peace in villages, who are farming, most of it subsistence farming, and some of it with a little bit of surplus that they can sell and they can make the year cycle go around, have been pushed out away from farming because of fear, because of attacks, because of kidnapping. This is bandit Fulani. These are kidnappers. These were Fulani who themselves had their own grievance, but those grievances were not addressed. So now you have quite possibly millions of Hausa peasants living either with relations in towns and villages, or living in as IDPs, or living on the streets. They are not, for the last 3 years, they've grown nothing. So the nation is actually facing the prospect of famine. It's real. But it's not, the Fulani didn't just wake up to say, man, the roots about the relationship between the Fulani and the Hausa are very, very deep. They go back centuries. We've lived together with each other. We've had a few clashes, but we virtually almost, that's why you hear about this kind of thing, Hausa Fulani.
There was once on this program I asked you whether indeed there was a group in Nigeria.
There is. And they number in millions and millions and millions. And there's nothing wrong with that. People answer to Hausa Fulani because when you live together for 500 years, you share the same ecosystem. These are farmers, these are herders, we share the same land, we live together. Once in a while we have frictions, we sort them out. That was traditional way of doing that. The real threat that I don't think the state has paid attention to, and tragically now it will pay even less attention to, because it is now trying to recreate itself after 2023. The APC government, which has so spectacularly failed in the last 7-8 years to deal with insecurity, is now rushing to make sure that it actually recreates itself. And we ask ourselves questions, to do what? You want to do the same thing? You know how many ministers and governors APC ministers and governors, including a vice president of President Buhari's vice president,
who want to continue the policy.
Yes, and if we ask a question, it's legitimate. Sir, what would you do different that you didn't do when you were vice president? Now, his defense naturally would be, but you know better. I was only a vice president. Then we ask him again, you are a professor of law, and you hold a very, very respectable position as a very high-level Christian clergy. Don't you have a moral burden? Are you saying absolutely that you had no role in the decline of this country in the 7 years that you served as president, such that you feel confident enough to come to us and ask us to trust you to give you the number one position? I don't want to just single him out. I'm saying there were governors, there were ministers. There's a minister who was running around in a stadium a few days after the kidnap on the train. APC people who were part and parcel of the governance of this country in the 7 years that we saw our worst decline are now asking us, in their numbers, trust me to fix this country. With what? How did you do this? But the choice is Nigerians. If they believe that the people who destroyed the house also have the capacity to rebuild it, fine. All we ask is please ask them with what material? With what material? You also have PDP people saying, give us back the country. And again, we can legitimately say, What are you going to do with it? Are you going to do with it the same thing? You create the conditions for the emergence of APC? Because you see, bad as you see APC is, APC would never have succeeded if PDP didn't have a government that quarreled between themselves and had massive defections because people don't like the fact that Jonathan was going to continue.
And they couldn't negotiate themselves out of that problem.
So they had the country. They thought nothing would ever take Nigeria away from PDP. So they could do what they wanted. And the voters said, no, it's enough, it's enough. So if PDP candidates come forward, we're going to ask them, tell us what you're going to do between 1999 and 2015, when APC took power away from you. Tell us specifically what did you do wrong and what are you going to do different. Don't tell us you've learned your lessons. They were not your lessons. Because if you can buy a ticket for 50 million, and we look at you, and all we see are very rich people looking very healthy, and you cannot go to a village. You cannot go to a village. And you want to rule Nigeria. So tell us, show us your program, show us your policies, show us why you think we should trust PDP again. If we have another party or another set of parties that come forward and say, don't trust these two people. Don't trust these two people. These were the people who brought the country to its knees. Don't trust them. Again, we'll ask them, what do you have to do? What are you going to do that is different from others? Where are your programs? Who do you have that we can trust to fight security, to fight corruption, to get our young people jobs, to restore confidence of the citizen in the state, to make young Nigerians believe that they have a future in this country, so that I can go and say to my Yoruba friend, you are really my friend, you are not my enemy because you are Yoruba, I'm Hausa Fulani. I will stop fighting you and calling you an enemy simply because one of you didn't become president. If you have a Yoruba president, is every Yoruba in this country going to become, to start swimming in honey and milk? If you have an Igbo president, how is he going to deal with IPOB? Are we going to see IPOB disappear? Because IPOB is more than just an organization that is demanding for secession. IPOB is an omnibus train for a lot of grievances in the southeast. People don't understand this. And that's why now they have so many divisions.
My producer is doing like this. I'm going to rope two things into one. One is to rephrase a question I had asked you before. That is, what manner of president would the Northern Elders Forum want in 2023, and how are they going about making sure that that kind of president emerges? That is one. Two, if fairness, equity, and morality do apply at all in politics, if it's not just all interest, is it fair and just and equitable for the Southeast, forget about their rhetorics, to say, we should also produce the president? Two questions.
Okay, first, what kind of president would the NEF want to see? We want to see a Nigerian president. When I say this, I mean a person who sees himself first and foremost as a Nigerian who has to deal with Nigerian problems, wherever they are. He has the courage to deal with Boko Haram, to deal with banditry, to deal with IPOP, to deal with cultism, to deal with crude theft, to deal with irredentism, to deal with a lot of the crimes that have grown up. He should have the courage to do that. Two, he should have the knowledge about how to do it. Three, he must be accountable to the Nigerian people. Where there's a failure, he should make himself available to answer our questions. Four, he must never have an ethnic, religious, or regional toga. Because if he does, then a huge part of the country will say it's their own. More than anything else, we don't want a president who will draw lines around problems and say, I can deal with this one, but I'm not going to deal with this one. We want the kind of president who would go to Borno and deal with Boko Haram with the same decisiveness as he would deal with the threats that are represented by IPOB. When you put all these requirements, it tells you one thing. all these attempts to exclude some people and say this must be ours and it is our turn, it is our turn, it's our turn, they just simply limit the space for the emergence of a true Nigerian president. We believe it is possible for Nigerians to elect a president who is genuinely Nigerian, who has the courage and the knowledge and the wisdom and the sincerity to actually deal with Nigerian problems properly and headlong. The second question, you use these words, equity, justice, and fairness. And I hear them so often, I'm beginning to think as if Igbo created them, because they apply them only to the interests.
English words.
I know they are English words, but they have become monopolized by people who think if there's equity, justice, and fairness, there should be an Igbo president in 2023. Let me tell you the truth. There can be an Igbo president in 2023. Some of the candidates that are coming out from the southern part of the country are good enough to be Nigerian presidents. The injury they do to themselves, or they allow people to do to them, is by identifying them principally as Igbo candidates. They are not Igbo candidates. They will not be Igbo candidates. They will be candidates who will aspire to govern Nigeria. If you are talking about equity, justice, and fairness, equity means you recognize the fact that all parts are entitled to something. Why would you say to political parties who under the Constitution are free to choose who will fly their flag? You cannot do that. You can only give it to a southerner. What if the party says no? For us, the best candidate we believe can get the presidency does not come from the southeast. Do you see equity there? Two, you're talking about justice. Justice means creating a level playing field for everybody. And justice is applicable to everybody. If you have a Kanuri president or an Ijo president, justice demands that when he or she swears by the Bible of the Quran, and says, I will do justice, the words in the Constitution, I will do justice, it really genuinely means he will do justice, irrespective of where he comes from. Justice, equity, and fairness. And you talk about fairness. Igbo have issues, some Igbo have issues with this country. Yet the Igbo is by far the most Nigerianized ethnic group. He is in every nook and corner of this country. He is one of the biggest, strongest pillars of the backbone of this country. He keeps the economy of this country going. Every community is fair to the Igbo. Wherever you go, you see chemists. He's there. Nigerians recognize the value of the Igbo. If you define fairness only in terms of having one Igbo person to become president, how does that help you, Mr. Njoku? You are sitting here in Abuja, you walk with a swagger thinking, now there is an Igbo president, there is an Igbo president. How does that help the Igbo? How does, in fact, how does it, if he has to come to power, if an Igbo person has to come to power on the back of intimidation and threat, you would actually threaten millions of Igbo people who are operating outside Igbo land, Lagos, in many parts of Nigeria, living peacefully, earning their living, not investing in the Southeast because the Southeast is insecure and unsafe. Nigeria is available to them. So if you're talking about fairness, you scrutinize these words, justice, equity, and fairness. They use them as if they only mean one thing, that there must be an Igbo president. There can be an Igbo president. But what they need to do is to change the rhetoric, the dialogue. It's not about an Igbo presidency. But the North can. I don't know about the Southwest, but I'm telling you, the North can elect an Igbo president. And the North can elect a Northern president as well, if he's the best. And we will offer no apologies for that. We're looking for the best. And if the best is what we need, then issues that you see justice, equity, and fairness. Because what you do is you go to the voter and you say to the voter, choose who you want. That's justice, equity, and fairness. allow the parties to field candidates freely, allow the voter to choose who he wants, then you have justice, equity, and fairness. Because the democratic system is built on this tripod, justice, equity, and fairness. But when you take it and ethnicize it and localize it, and you make it to appear as if it is the property of only one ethnic group, you devalue it. And we keep saying to people, I have friends who are running for the presidency, and believe me, and I'm saying this in all honesty, they know. I hope they see this program. They know who I'm talking about. I won't mention their names. I would welcome one of them to be president. If they ask me to work with them, I would, in any way, I would work with them. Because I believe...
hope not Rocha Sokorocha.
Well, I'm not going to mention names.
Okay, don't mention names.
I'm telling you there are people from that part of the country, the same way that I know that there are good people from the northern part of the country and from the western part of the country. And if justice, equity, and fairness should mean anything, why doesn't the Igbo talk to Yoruba people and the South people and say, look, start from there. Zoning is about north and south. We keep the northerners away. You, our neighbors, fellow southerners, stop fielding candidates. Stop fielding candidates. You are destroying our case. Because if all of you cede the position to us, it makes it easy for us to take up the north. But you don't see that. You see a lot of Yoruba people vigorously campaigning against Igbo people. You see South people. Today I saw, on the way to this program, I saw more than 1,000 posters of President Jonathan on the streets. Some people are campaigning for him. If you want justice, equity, and fairness, why don't you start at home? Why don't you convince the rest of the South to cede this position to the Southeast first? And then get the Southeast perhaps to prune down their numbers and say, no, look, listen, you are spoiling the game. So you use words, and they have become valueless. And I've said this many times. What you sell is your ideas, and you recognize the fact that ultimately the person who will decide this may never have had an English word, justice, equity, and fairness. All he knows is he will look for his interest. Go and convince him that, or her that it's in your interest to trust me. What happened to democracy? Are we running a democratic system? Have they forgotten that whatever you do, eventually you have to submit yourself to an election? But when you tie up people and you say, no, you and you and you can only play in the second half of the match or at the tail end of the match, but the rest of us will play against you. So all you do is you sit down and we let's score as many goals as possible. Then 10 minutes to the end of the match, we will free you. You are voters. That's what zoning is talking about. Or giving the country only one part of the country, an advantage that the others have. That's basically what you are doing. You are tying up the rest of Nigeria. That's not democracy. The foundational principle of the democratic system is equity, justice, and fairness.
Equity, justice, and fairness.
Yes, not the claim.
Not localizing it.
Yes, not localizing it. You localize it, you spoil it. And I'm telling you, it is not doing excellent candidates from the Southeast any favor.
Dr. Ahmed, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you very much for coming to the conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. I always enjoy your program. Thank you.
Well, you know that the conversation never ends. Next Sunday, we return, and it's always wonderful talking with Dr. Ahmed, who's been our guest on this program for almost 3 times now. Let's see you next Sunday. Good afternoon.